Hey everyone, welcome back for another Wednesday. As you know, we have a virtual meeting house tonight, so we're gonna play some fun games, we're gonna have some small group time, and we're just gonna check in and see how everyone's feeling this week because it's been a pretty chaotic week for our country. I'm sure your families have experienced that too, and I just wanna hear from you guys how you're doing in that. So if you listened to the message last week, you would know that we are starting our new series, Welcome Beloved, which is one of Colonial's core values. And last week I talked about some of my family's history and what it means to really welcome the stranger. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that this week. And I want us to talk about what it means to welcome the stranger and how that sometimes asks us to also welcome sacrifice into our lives. Because loving your neighbor can be really hard. And it asks a lot of us. And sometimes there are things we have to give up in order to do that well. So I'm going to tell you guys a little story about when I was in middle school. I think some of you have probably heard this story before. But when I was in 6th grade, so my middle school split us into teams. So 6th grade had 4 different teams. I was on team 601, and all of my friends were on team 603. So that meant I didn't really see my friends during the day. We didn't have classes together. We had different lunch schedules. So I was really lost and lonely and kind of looking for new friends. And I started to hang out with this new friend group who I thought were super cool. And even though they weren't super nice to me, they let me come to stuff. We talked during class. We sat by each other at lunch. So even though I didn't totally feel like I was part of the group, I still put up with it because I was like, I need someone to sit by at lunch, right? And I don't know these people that well, but I'm sure we'll get to know each other. And there was one day at lunch when I had to run to the bathroom before lunch. And our lunch table was like 1 seat short of how many people sat there. And so whoever came there last had to share a seat with somebody else. And it was a little risky because it was against the cafeteria rules for some reason. And so you could either get in trouble or sometimes you might be asked to move to another seat. And I was terrified of that happening because I had no idea where else I would go. And so that particular day, I got there and all the seats had been taken. So no big deal. I sat with one of my friends in her seat until one of the lunch pairs came around and told us that I needed to find my own seat. So I looked around the lunchroom and there didn't seem to be any open seats with the tables where I knew people. There was one completely empty table right next to where my friends were. So I went and sat there, and I really hoped that one of my friends would come join me. But guess what, guys? Nobody came to join me. I sat at that empty lunch table. It was like 15 seats. I sat at it completely by myself for the entire lunch period. And I remember being just so embarrassed and so hurt because it looked like I had no friends. When people came and looked at me, I could see they were thinking, why is she sitting by herself? And then I was really hurt because none of my friends had cared enough to come follow me and sit with me. None of them cared enough to come keep me company or let me know that I wasn't alone. So I sat there feeling really down and feeling like, wow, none of those people care about me. None of them cared enough to come and be with me when I'm alone. And the thing is, I understand why they did it, and I probably would have done the same thing in their shoes because we want to be part of the group, right? We don't want to have to sacrifice our standing with the group. We don't want to sacrifice our own comfort. We don't want to have to give something up, even if it means going to be there for someone who needs it. And so it's a very human thing, but I was still really hurt and really embarrassed. And looking back, I think it's, if we want to be like Jesus, if we want to follow in Jesus's footsteps, that means that we have to go and be the people who sit with the people who are by themselves. We have to be the people who show up for other people and show them that even if being there for you requires me to give something up, I'm still going to do it because you are worth it, because I love you, because you are my sibling in Christ. And I think it's important for us to learn that we sometimes have to be uncomfortable for the sake of including and loving the people around us. And I think if even one of those people had decided, I want to sit with this group and I want to be part of this, but I don't want Madison to be by herself. I want to go be there for her. I think I wouldn't have felt so alone and embarrassed. it would have meant a lot to me if even one person had done that. And this kind of reminds me of the story of Ruth and Naomi. If you're not familiar with it, I'll summarize real quick. In the book of Ruth, in the Old Testament, there's a woman named Naomi who loses her husband. And she also has 2 adult sons who are both married. And shortly after she loses her husband, she also loses her sons. And during this time, unfortunately, society was pretty patriarchal. So if a woman didn't have a male family member to take care of her, there's a very good chance that she would starve. So Naomi decided that she needed to find a way to live. And she had heard that Bethlehem, her old hometown, she had heard that God blessed the people there with an abundance of food. And so she thought, I have a chance there. I should go home and see if I can live on my own. And her daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, decided that they wanted to come with her. But Naomi told them no. She said, you guys are both young. You have your whole lives ahead of you. You could find new husbands if you stay here. I don't want you to have to risk your lives to come follow me to Bethlehem if you don't have to. And Orpah agreed with this. So she gave Naomi a kiss goodbye. But Ruth resisted. She said to Naomi, don't urge me to abandon you, to turn back from following after you. Wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do this to me and more so, if even death separates me from you. And that's one of my favorite Bible verses because it shows such a commitment that Ruth feels to Naomi. She loved her so much that she was willing to go on this journey with her. Because if Ruth had stayed back, she would have had a chance at living a normal, comfortable life. She could have found a new husband and lived in the place she had always known. But she knew that if Naomi went off to Bethlehem, she was going to be all by herself. And Ruth said, no, I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not going to let you go off and be by yourself. I'm coming with you. And she insisted because she loved Naomi so much. I think this is a really good example of how we're supposed to show up for the people in our lives. We should be there for them. We should pursue them when they're off by themselves. And I don't think that means we can't have boundaries for ourselves. I think it's actually really good to think about your own well-being, think about your own happiness, love yourself because Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. And so to love other people, we start with ourselves. We start here. But I also think that you can love yourself and recognize that sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the good of the people we love. Sometimes we have to sacrifice certain things in order to show our neighbors that we're there for them. We can have boundaries, we can take care of ourselves, we can care about our own happiness, and sometimes there are things we're going to have to give up in order to better love other people. And so I think this story really summarizes what it means to be so loving and committed to someone you love that you're willing to risk something. And that doesn't mean we give up any chance of happiness for ourselves, because Ruth actually does find another husband when she goes to Bethlehem, a man named Boaz. So that we can find happiness, we can put ourselves first, and also sometimes God calls us to take risks and be there for the people we love, show up for our neighbors, go sit with the person who's sitting by themselves, even when it costs you something. And the cool thing is that we can do those things together. If you notice, Orpah didn't go with them. Orpah decided to stay back and try her luck at finding someone else in the town that she was from. And the Bible doesn't say anything against Orpah. I think she made the decision that was best for herself. And so there are going to be times when we choose to put our own interests first. And when we need to do that, other people in our community can step up and show people love. So that's why it's important to do this together, because if we don't, it's really easy to swing in either extreme, like only loving yourself and only loving your neighbor. It's important to do both of those things at once. But it is really easy to do one or the other. So I have days when I'm only thinking about my own interests. I'm being really selfish. I don't care what anybody else needs. I just want to do what I want to do. And then I have days where all I'm thinking about is other people. All I'm trying to do is like serve other people and help them to a point where I stop thinking about myself. And neither of those things are good. But when we do this in community, we can remind each other to love yourself, love your neighbor, do both of those things at once. And when I fall short, someone else will step up. So we're never meant to do this on our own. We're supposed to do it together. And even if it requires some sacrifice, it's gonna even out in the end, because where I make a sacrifice for somebody else, if I'm in the right community, someone else will make a sacrifice for me too. So remember that we're not alone in this. Don't try to take all this on yourself, but engage with your community, be there for people, and then also expect other people to be there for you and let other people be there for you. So that's what it means to welcome the stranger and to welcome sacrifice into our lives. We're going to talk about this in our small groups a little bit later, so thank you guys for listening.